אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
As civilian deaths mount in Gaza, some in the international community accuse Israel of war crimes. Others use another word, genocide. But that word is specifically defined as killing or other actions committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Is that what we're witnessing?
Dr. Lemkin is the man who created the word genocide. Dr. Lemkin, could you give us a little background on how you came to be interested in this genocide?
Became interested in genocide because it happened so many times.
Why is genocide so hard to prove? The simple answer to that question is because the international community has simply set the threshold for the crime that high. But also because genocide has become a political term which connotes mass killing rather than the legal term of art which it is. So let's look at the legal definition. Genocide is defined under Article 2 of the Genocide Convention of 1948, drafted after the horrors of the Second World War, as any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. The acts mentioned are killing, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. This definition was drafted after the Holocaust, but was written to encapsulate that horror in particular. Genocide is a denial of the right of existence of entire human groups. As homicide is the denial of the right to life of an individual human being, it is a crime simultaneously directed against that individual victim, the group to which they belong, as well as human diversity as a whole. The first conviction for genocide by an international court was recorded on 2nd September 1998 by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda of Jean-Paul Akayesu, a Rwandan mayor. 2 days after his conviction, Jean Kambanda, the former Prime Minister of Rwanda, was also sentenced to life imprisonment after pleading guilty to genocide as well as crimes against humanity. Now, the hardest thing to prove with genocide is that special intent to destroy the group. In terms of armed conflict, where the intention is to defeat the opposing side, it might be difficult to assess whether mass killings are committed with a genocidal intent or with the intent of winning the war, which is something that we've heard Israel argue: we're fighting this war to eliminate Hamas, we're not fighting it to eliminate the Palestinian people. The findings of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in the Krstić case and of the Commission of Inquiry on Darfur provide quite useful illustrations in this. So the defense in Krstić argued that the purpose of the killings in Srebrenica was not to destroy the group as a whole, but to remove a military threat. And this was evidenced by the fact that we'd only ever targeted men of military age. Now, the trial chamber did not accept this, and neither did later the appeals chamber. They held that those killings did constitute genocide and that genocide had taken place in Srebrenica. They said the Bosnian Serb forces could not have failed to know, by the time they decided to kill all the men, that this selective destruction of the group would have a lasting impact on the entire group. The Bosnian Serb forces had to be aware of the catastrophic impact that the disappearance of 2 or 3 generations of men would have on the survival of a traditionally patriarchal society. The Bosnian Serb forces knew by the time they decided to kill all of the military-age men that the combination of those killings with the forcible transfer of the women, children, and elderly would inevitably result in the physical disappearance of the Bosnian Muslim population at Srebrenica. Finally, they said there is a strong indication of the intent to destroy the group as such in the concealment of the bodies in mass graves, which were later dug up, the bodies mutilated and reburied in other mass graves. By killing all of the military-aged men, the Bosnian Serb forces effectively destroyed the community of the Bosnian Muslims in Srebrenica and eliminated all likelihood that it could ever re-establish itself in that territory. That is why it then ultimately held that there was a genocide in Srebrenica, but Serbia had not committed that genocide. It had, however, failed to prevent it from being committed. The court also did not hold that genocide had been committed anywhere else in the former Yugoslavia. A key issue when it comes to the definition of genocide is that of forced displacement. Forced displacement, as the international community and also as the court has held a number of times in its past precedent, does not constitute genocide. When states were negotiating the draft for the 1948 Genocide Convention, the Syrian representative wanted forced displacement to be included in the definition, probably thinking about the actions that had taken place in Palestine the year prior with the Nakba. The international community did not agree. And this is something that international case law has upheld. The ICJ did look at this in a case brought by Croatia against Serbia, where Croatia relied on a memorandum prepared in 1986 by the Serbian Academy of Sciences and Arts, which allegedly contributed to the rebirth of this idea of a greater Serbia. The court found that the intention behind that memo was not to destroy the Croats in this idea of a greater Serbia, saying it did not prove that it was a genocidal intent, saying that forced displacement was the instrument of a policy aimed at establishing an ethnically homogeneous Serbian state. In that context, the expulsion of the Croats was brought about by the creation of a coercive atmosphere. It was not a question of systematically destroying that population, but of forcing it to leave the areas controlled by these armed forces. The court concluded the only reasonable inference drawn from this conduct is not that the Serb forces wanted to destroy the Croat population, but that they just wanted to force the Croats to leave certain areas to form their own state. In the same direction, the Darfur Commission came to the same conclusion, saying that the policy of attacking, killing, and forcibly displacing members of some tribes in Darfur did not show the special intention of genocide, but rather the intent to drive the victims from their homes, primarily for purposes of counterinsurgency warfare. So even when we look at Nazi Germany, when they decided to prevent Jewish emigration, the early policy was that you have to buy your way out, but you can leave. But there was a point then when borders were closed in 1941. Maybe that was when the mental element of genocide shifted from ethnic cleansing to becoming one of a genocidaire. So for genocide, there has to be that transition from ethnic cleansing from displacement to destruction. Otherwise, it is a crime of ethnic cleansing, which is a crime against humanity, but it does not constitute the crime of genocide. Now, these are all things that the court will be weighing up when it comes to Israel's actions in Gaza. And perhaps South Africa's strongest argument now is that, sure, not all conflicts are genocidal, but committing such wanton war crimes while starving the population and while preventing them from leaving cannot be anything but.